Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us for another Founders for Schools digital event. This is an event that ties in with British Science Week, and the focus of today's event is knowledge growth. We've got three fantastic speakers here for you today. I'm going to introduce them very shortly. If you've got any questions for the speakers throughout the session, please pop them in the chat. We will get them to the speakers at the end if we've got time. We're also popping something in there called Slido. If you can have a look at that link and give us some feedback through there, that would be really helpful as well. As I say, we've got three speakers today, so in order to make sure we make the most of our time, I'm going to pass straight over to our first speaker, who is Joanne. She is here from the Cambridge Science Centre, and she's going to tell us a little bit about her work and what it is that she does. So over to you, Joanne, and thanks very much.
Thank you. Yeah, my name is Joanne, and I'm a science communicator at Cambridge Science Centre. And you might be thinking, what is a science communicator? Well, what I do every day in my job is I write and I present science talks and demonstrations to school groups in the centre and also to schools and community groups further afield in Cambridge and beyond. It's a really interesting job because you never know what's going to come up every day. One day you might be presenting a show about living safely in space. The next day you might be designing a land yacht. And some days we're still back in the centre making tons of slime to explain non-Newtonian fluids. So you never know what's going to come up. Our main aim is to help spark curiosity in the children that we see. It's mostly primary school children that I'm presenting to. And sometimes those children don't get on so well with science, technology, engineering, and maths. They sometimes don't feel that those are subjects that they can do or that they're confident in. And it's kind of my job and the job of the rest of the science communicators at Cambridge Science Centre to try to get the children used to exploring their environment and used to exploring these STEM subjects and presenting the STEM subjects in a bit of a different way to try and make the science accessible to everyone and understandable to everyone. So it's a really varied job. We might be presenting, we might be writing some STEM club sessions, but the main thing about it is that it's really, really good fun. It's really interesting for me. My background is as a biologist, but every day I get to talk about and to learn myself about different subjects. I'm really not an engineer and I'm really not a mathematician, but I have presented talks and workshops on both of those subjects. So it gives me a chance to learn a little bit as well in my daily job. You need to be able to think pretty quickly. You never know when you're going to come up against some unusual questions, especially from younger children. They can go completely off piste and ask you really interesting and unusual questions. So you need to be able to think quickly. It's also helpful if you're a little bit creative. We write the shows that we present and we write the workshops that we present. So being able to adapt science subjects to different audiences is a really helpful skill. But I didn't always want to be a science communicator. In fact, when I was starting out at secondary school, I didn't even know science communication was a thing. I had no idea what I was going to do. And I think the best thing that I can say in terms of my career path and my knowledge and growth in the sector is that I always tried to do something that I enjoyed. I loved biology at school, so I carried on doing biology because I liked it. I did a degree in microbiology and genetics. Then I went on to work on some human chromosomes in breast cancer. After that, I worked for a little while with nematode worms, C. elegans, and I studied aging in nematode worms. And then I decided that I did want to go back to human biology. So I spent quite a long time as a clinical cytogeneticist, which looks at chromosomes in the diagnostic setting in Addenbrooke's Hospital in Cambridge. And I worked there for a number of years in looking at prenatal diagnosis and postnatal developmental delay in children and adults. But that was all getting a little bit too much for me and a little bit too in the way of the creative things that I wanted to do. So I left the diagnostic labs and joined Cambridge Science Centre. And I think for me, that was the best thing I could have done. I was back to doing something that I really, really enjoyed, which was talking about science subjects. And it gave me a really broad, exposure to lots and lots of different subjects. I'd never really done physics when I was at school. Found out I quite like talking about astrophysics, especially. So you never know what's going to come up in the daily job, and it's always interesting. And you're always meeting new people and meeting children who might not think that science is for them. And I think the best part of my job is when you get a child who says, I can't do this. I don't know what, I can't do STEM subjects. It's impossible. And then you just encourage them a little bit, give them a little bit of time, be patient with them, work around the subject that you're talking about, try to present it in different ways. And suddenly you see that child understands something, they get it. And that for me is the best part of my job. It's that ability to take a subject that that children may not feel that confident with and help them through it, give them the space to explore the ideas themselves. Sometimes they don't get a chance to do that in a classroom setting, and it's really nice for us in the Science Centre. We've got lots of hands-on exhibits. They can play with everything. We can demonstrate things to them in an interesting and unusual way, and you get the understanding coming through in those children, and that's what I really like about my job. And I think that's one of the things I want to leave you with today, is that knowledge that you don't have to be an expert in everything, especially not in science communication. You have to love talking about science, be a little bit creative, have a little bit of confidence because you're talking in front of lots of people every day. But if that's something that you enjoy, then you should push yourself and definitely go for it.
Thank you, Joanne. I mean, that's really interesting, and what a CV. I mean, that really that is some background that you've got there. So yeah, really interesting. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. We'll do questions at the end if that's okay. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to move on to our next speaker, who is Jennifer. Jennifer is the Director of Data Platform at Disney. If you would like to tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and how you got to where you are, that would be fantastic. And I'll hand over to you now.
Wonderful. Thank you, Andrew. And I think it's fair to say I've had a very different career path than Joanne's, which I found incredibly inspiring and exciting. And I think I have about 20 questions for you. um, so I'll be jumping into the Q&A. So as Andrew said, I work at the Walt Disney Company in London. I think it's definitely fair to say it's, in terms of being here talking to you about technology, it isn't a career path I necessarily chose, but one that my career has evolved into. And I think that's something I find quite exciting. You might guess from my accent, I'm not from here. I grew up in Seattle, but I've been in the UK quite a long time. I studied economics and marketing and originally worked in website consulting many years ago when websites were quite new and they were difficult to use and companies needed help making them easier to use. So that's really how I got started with technology, but always focused on the business side of it. I've also done quite a number of years working in market research. I worked at the BBC for some time. So market research, doing things like focus groups, what did you think of this website? Or what do you think about our mobile apps, and talking to customers with qualitative and quantitative research to understand surveys and focus groups and what they think about it. I've been at Disney for 8.5 years, started in the market research team as well. And then as my role evolved, I got more and more interested in data. And that's really what I'm doing today and here to talk to you about today. So I am currently sitting in our technology team at Disney. I have a team of about 30 people who I'd like to say we work across the end-to-end data journey. So what is data? What does that mean? So data is everywhere. I think it's been really exciting for me over recent years, seeing that everyone is getting excited by data now. For the good, the bad, and the ugly around data. It's something that we talk about, I think, in the press on a regular basis. So data for us is everything from how are our websites doing? What do people do when they come to our websites? Which YouTube videos are most popular? What TV shows are people watching? Which ones, again, are the most popular? So really using data and using numbers to help us understand the performance of our content, the performance of our websites, it could be of our apps, it could be of our products that you're buying on Amazon or in Tesco, or wherever it might be. So all this is collecting data. And what I love is using this data with my team to help clients within the business to understand and make things better in every which way, and to optimize and to work on improvements. So end-to-end data journey, what is that? So my team will work very closely with the business to understand, well, what data? So you want data, you're working with data, what data? Where is the source? Where does this live? Working to take that data and bring it into our databases. We're, to use some buzzwords, we're looking at cloud-based platforms now. That's a key part of what we do. So bringing data in, keeping it in the cloud, transforming the data, but also as part of that, we have to make sure the data is right. Just because someone gives you data doesn't mean it's accurate or correct. So we need to do checks there. A lot of those checks are automated. Take the data, clean it up, and then we want people to be able to use it, right? So people need to be able to access the data. So we might say, here's a dashboard. Go to a website on your computer, you can access all the data there. Or we might say, here's our database, you can use SQL to access the data and do what you want with it. Or in some cases, we might say we've done some data science analysis and here's what we found and here's what we think you can use it for. So it really depends on the client, the data set, what the need is, but a lot of different things that we can do with data. And I think one of the things that I like most about it is seeing how excited teams around the business get. You might work with someone who's been doing a report manually in PowerPoint, in Excel. It takes them a week, a month, whatever it might be, and we can automate it for them. What that means is it frees up their time for thinking, for analysis, for understanding the data, rather time that was spent copying and pasting, and it also removes human error. So I think that's one of the things I get most excited about. But I also love talking to people around the business about data because they hadn't considered all the things that can be done and the ways that we can bring data together in new ways, to help them understand things anew. Trying to think what else I can tell you about what I like about my job. I love it, like I said, when we can make things faster, better, different, just allowing people to do things in new ways, as I said. We're always looking at the new technology because the technology is constantly changing. And I think it's incredibly exciting seeing my team, which is engineers, data scientists, analysts, data architects, always looking at the next technology. It's always changing, and we have to stay on top of it because might be there's a new tool out there which makes our lives easier, or sometimes we have a problem which comes up and we think we don't have the technology, that it doesn't exist just yet for us to solve this problem. So having to come up with workarounds or things that we can do to solve the problem ourselves. But it's an incredibly exciting space. And I love talking about it and working with my team about it, and really, truly love that I have ended up working in technology. Like I said, it's not something I had thought about or considered, but something I more evolved into. And I feel incredibly lucky to be here doing so. And it's also, of course, fabulous to work for Disney, which is a very exciting company. So I really feel lucky with my job and the company and everything I do. So I think that's probably a nice point to come to a close, and look forward to any questions later. So thank you.
Great, Jennifer. Thank you very much. Again, really interesting to hear just what goes on in an organisation of that size. That's sort of a peek behind the curtain. That's fantastic. Thank you very much for that. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to hand over to our third and final speaker for today. Katrina is working in sustainability, water distillation, things like that. She will give you much better description, much better information about it than I can. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Katrina.
So I, again, have come from a totally different journey from our two previous speakers, although, like Jennifer was saying, I had no idea that Science Communicator also existed. It also sounds amazing. And if you ever need an intern to come and help you play with slime all day, then I'm available. So I work in startups developing clean technologies, so technologies that are good for the planet or that will help us combat climate change. And that's what I love to do, but I'll tell you a bit about how I got here first, and then I'll tell you a bit about what I do. So I, at school, I liked science and maths quite a lot, and I thought I was quite good at it. I found pure science and pure maths kind of, I didn't find it satisfying unless it was applied to the real world. And my theory was that what was engineering was maths and physics applied to real world topics. And I think that's a fairly good explanation of what it is. So I went off to university. I decided on engineering about a month before the UCAS deadline. So you don't need to know what you want to do. Obviously, it's good if you do know. So I went off to university to do engineering. I did a course that was called General Engineering. So you do a little bit of all of the different topics. So a bit of civil engineering, so how buildings stand up, a bit of electrical engineering, so how is the circuits in your iPhone, how are they designed, and a bit of mechanical, so how does an airplane fly. So it was a general course for the first 2 years, and then my third and fourth year I specialised in a topic called manufacturing engineering, which I also loved. Again, I had no idea that it was a topic that existed when I started at university, and I just fell into it and I loved it. So it's all about how stuff is made. So everything that we're using, this laptop that I'm speaking to, is built in a factory somewhere, and how you set up the factory, how you design the object that it can be made for manufacturing. I find that super interesting. Anyway, then I left university and had zero clue about what jobs existed in the world of work. And so I did what all my friends were applying to, which is not a smart way to pick a career, which was business consulting. So I did that for a few years. I learned a lot, but it wasn't where my strengths lie. And I realized I really missed the engineering technical side of things. And so I found a company that was a tiny startup at this time, developing a solar-powered desalination technology, so turning seawater into drinking water. The problems with, which is a very important technology in parts of the world where you don't have fresh drinking water supplies. The problems with the technology is that it's very expensive, and also can release quite a toxic waste product. They're very salty leftover water, and we can put it back into the ocean. So there were some environmental concerns about it. So my startup was looking at a very environmentally friendly way of desalinating water. So that was really fun. Took the company from, we were 5 people when I joined, and I joined as the first employee. And then when I left 5 years later, we were a company of 25 people. We had a big sized industrial pilot unit, so the first kind of demonstrating using it, built in Dubai, so lots of travel as well. I loved it. And I have just started with a new startup, which is looking at a battery electrolyzer technology. So battery, like you have in your phone, your laptop, stores electricity, and an electrolyzer is the technology that you put in water, and it splits in water, H2O, and it splits it into hydrogen and oxygen. And so hydrogen is quite a useful element that we can do stuff with, a useful gas that we can do stuff with, and with an increasing focus on climate technologies, that hydrogen, there's a more emphasis on using hydrogen. So the technology that we're working with in my current company is called Electrolyzer, is looking at developing this technology that it could be used, it could be connected to a solar farm or a wind farm. And the idea is that when it's windy, you'll be turning your wind turbines, and you're producing electricity, and you can feed it into the grid, but which is where everyone gets their electricity from. But on some days the grid is full and it can't, all the wind turbines are blowing, all the solar, it's the sunny day, it's a windy day, and you can't accept any more renewable energy into the grid, so you have to store it, and also you want to store some for times when the wind doesn't blow or when the sun doesn't shine. So what this technology that we're developing is, it receives electricity, and the electrical battery stores up, and when it gets full, it's a property of the battery that it starts to release hydrogen. So until now, this is a downside because hydrogen is quite explosive, and you don't want a battery in an explosive environment where you can cause a big fire. But now with this we're entering a hydrogen economy where hydrogen is more valuable. What it means is that you can collect all of the energy from your wind farm, even when your battery's full and the grid can't handle anymore, but you're still producing more and more wind energy that you can collect and use all of that energy to produce hydrogen, and then you can sell it. So it's a very exciting technology, I think. I think energy storage has got a big part to play with in the future. And my job that I do for the company is project management. So I am managing the development of the next generation of the technology. So we have a pilot unit that works really nicely, and it demonstrates that it works, and then we'll be developing a next version which will then sell to customers as a product. And my job is to manage the development of that. So that's me.
Thank you very much for that, Katrina. Again, really interesting, such a varied background, such three varied speakers today. It's good to see so many different perspectives and so many different directions that working in STEM can take people. So thank you so much, all of our speakers, for speaking with us today. Just in terms of a question, I think I'll direct this one at Joanne first, if that's all right. What advice would you have for someone who's not really confident in their abilities in terms of working in STEM? They don't see themselves as top of the class in maths and things like that. Is there any advice that you would give to people like that who are still really interested in the subject?
I think, yes, if you enjoy it and if you are interested in the subject, but you're just not sure about your abilities in it, my advice would be read lots, go and read some of the popular science that's around, have a look at other science communicators who many have YouTube channels. So have a look at how they're presenting the science, because you might just come across a way of thinking about things that you hadn't seen before, and that will give you the understanding that you might be missing in a kind of teaching point of view. So that would be my advice, is immerse yourself in as many kind of science communication videos and things as you can find, because something will hit the right note with you, and some way of thinking about the science subject will help you.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks so much for that, Joanne. Next one at yourself, Jennifer, if that's all right. Obviously, you work for the Walt Disney Company, which is one of the world's biggest brands, but it's probably fair to say the first thing you think about with Walt Disney isn't data. So can you tell us how the data and the work that you do impacts on the rest of the work that goes on in the business?
Sure, I'll try. As you can imagine, it's a massive, massive organization, and that's part of the fun and part of the challenge. We have a lot of legacy technology, old tech. We're constantly working to move into the future. But of course, if you think about Disney, you think about our parks, you think about our movies, you think about our Disney Plus. But I think the thing you may not think about is there is data there behind all of that. If anyone's been to Florida, you often, for the parks there, they give you a band to wear where you go around and you tap into your hotel room, you tap into a restaurant, I think you tap at the rides. That's all data that's being captured to understand the experience that you're having. Anonymized, of course, to understand at the aggregate level what's happening, the flow of people. So data really underpins so much of what we do. We're a big company, so I don't get involved with what happens in our Florida parks, unfortunately. But at the same time, with our movies, we know numbers like box office. How do they do? That's data again, the revenue and the success around them. So there really is data everywhere. And I think just more and more to come in the coming months and years and decades as we're able to understand and process and use data in more ways. But it really is there. It just might surprise you if you think about some of these experiences. So data definitely underpins a lot of what we do already and will continue to do so.
Thank you. Next question for you, Katrina, if that's okay. Was there anything in particular that inspired you to work in the field that you do and with the technology that you do?
Oh, that's a good question. I think I always knew I wanted to do something that made a positive impact, but that can be, I think that could be applied to what Jennifer and Joanne do as well. So it's a very broad aim. And I got involved actually with a student society during my time at university that was kind of looking at green technologies, and that gave me a bit of a nudge that actually that was what I really enjoyed. That I didn't realise until quite a few years later, and that actually I should have kind of paid a bit more attention to my instincts. So I think it's a combination of what I wanted to do, what I was good at, and what jobs are available.
And one for you now, Joanne, if that's okay. Obviously, you spend a lot of time doing demonstrations and talking about science. Is there one that is either a particular favourite of yours or something that tends to have the most impact? I know you said you spend time working with younger ages sometimes. Is there any particular part of what you do that you think has the most impact or, gets the most people interested?
There's two very popular shows that we do. So our first one is called Destination Space, Join the Crew. And in that show, we follow the journey of an astronaut who, how they get to space. And there's lots of hands-on demonstrations of rockets and things like that, what it's like to live in space. And especially with younger audiences, they tend to know a little bit about living in space, but don't think about the details, like how you eat, how you have a shower, or don't, how you go to the toilet. And that's always a popular one. And then we look at returning safely from space and the technology behind the capsules that bring the astronauts back down to Earth, and how they manage to survive coming through the Earth's atmosphere, and what that means for the capsules as they come back to Earth. That's quite a popular one. And the other popular one, especially with younger children, is a show all about the digestive system, where we follow your food from your gums to your bum and what happens in between. Again, that's a really nice one. It's lots of hands-on activities that the children can follow the path of their food as they digest it. But it has got the background knowledge and background science of the digestive system and what each part of the digestive system is doing with your food as it travels through your body. It's a very popular one.
Fantastic, brilliant. And just one final question that we're going to direct at Jennifer, if that's all right. Jennifer, could you just tell us what's the gender balance like in your workplace, working in the field that you do?
It's a very good question. I unfortunately don't have the numbers to hand. I think, if I believe correctly, within the wider Disney company, I think it's quite an equal gender balance. Of course, when it comes to technology, it is less so. But I am really pleased when I look across my team and see more women joining my team and hiring women who've joined us quite recently. So it's something that we're definitely aware of, and I work within our Women at Disney committee to work across wider European initiatives and to work to inspire and encourage and promote and develop women across the company. So it's something definitely that is increasing and changing as we speak.
Is there anything that you would say to girls who are thinking of a career in any of the STEM subjects, but who see it as a sort of male-dominated area? Is there any advice that you would give to them?
It isn't. It doesn't have to be. It shouldn't be that way. I think be open-minded and see where your career takes you. If you know what you're passionate about, follow it. That's incredibly valuable. So I think follow your passions, follow your dreams, and the rest will hopefully fall into place.
Fantastic, brilliant. I would like to thank all of our three speakers again today. That is unfortunately all we've got time for, but we've covered really quite a range of topics there, from how you look after yourself in space, through to theme parks, through to how you turn a battery into hydrogen. So I think it really demonstrates the variety of careers and opportunities that are available in these fields. So thank you to Katrina, to Joanne, and Jennifer for being with us today. Thank you to everyone who's joined us on this F4S digital event. Hopefully we see you at another one in the future. If you would like to see more content like this, please go to our website. You can arrange to have speakers like these come in, talk to you in your school, talk to you about topics that you're interested in, not just about sciences, but across all of the different career opportunities that are there for you. So once again, thank you from me, thank you from Founders for Schools, and thank you to our speakers, and hopefully we see you all next time. Thanks again. Bye-bye.